Good morning.
Hello.
Hi. Um, I'm here with Kali Bosman, who is great. Got IFS and Yin Yoga and Chinese Five Element and what are your other descriptors? What do you
Well,
do?
recent,
Tell us about it.
sure.
Yeah.
I would say the major descriptor these days is mother. I'm a
Sure.
1-year-old mom,
Oh,
and thank you, Shane, for squeezing this in during my son's nap time, where we kind of like shape shift. And yes,
mhm.
we become mothers, and then we move into teaching, and then we're therapists, and we're yoga teachers, and we're retreat leaders, and it's a I guess it's a lifelong snake skin like that.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, thanks for coming. This interview is, largely for a group I run called the Ganesha Group. And it's like a medicine integration, it's community, but then each month we go through each one of the elements or chakras or meridian systems. Sometimes I'm
Beautiful.
more proficient in the Indic system than I am in the Chinese, but kind of weaving in. And given the hurricane, I really wanted to kind of weave in the Chinese five element and talk about this season, especially as it relates to the hurricane and just the season in general. So I know you're an expert, and I thought I would ask you, like, what season are we in? What
Yeah.
element? What season? Tell us about this.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are in autumn, and in Chinese medicine, that is the metal element. It's associated with the lungs and the lung channel, the lung meridian, which we'll speak about in a moment. But what's interesting, I think, particularly related to what's happening collectively, so much loss, a lot of fear, this upcoming election, this wake of climate change trauma and the hurricane. Uh, Lungs in Chinese medicine are the organ associated with grief. They're really responsible for hosting grief in the system, loss, transition, letting go, moving through. And, in Chinese medicine, every organ has a different emotion associated with it. Lungs are the organ of sorrow. It's like that, that deep lungy exhale of just like that which is too much to bear on our own. And I would say that autumn is a time just in the seasonal cycle, in the Dharma wheel of what's happening in the macro and in the microcosm. It's a letting go of leaves. It's a shaking off of the vitality of the preceding months. It's a death. Autumn really is a display of decay in a sense. And it's that endless cycle of grief giving way to releasing, giving way to a cleansing, giving way to a renewal, to a starting fresh, to the purity that then occurs in the springtime. So it's all about releasing. It's all about letting go. In yoga, we talk about autumn as the season of aparigraha. This is one of the eight limbs. This is the fifth yama on the eight limb path. Aparigraha is clinging, either clinging to or non-attachment of, right? So that the work of non-grasping. Like think about trees in the autumn, they don't hold on to the leaves for fear of not growing more in the springtime. They completely let go of what was serving them, of what was creating life force functionality in the organism, like completing the cycle, letting go. And it's the same for us, particularly in autumn, particularly when we're met with circumstances that we can't control. How much are we clamping onto? What are we clinging to? And what are we just open in the palms, open in the belly, releasing the grasp? Really, what that means
Mm.
is being comfortable with the death and rebirth cycles that will continuously merge and emerge through in this lifetime. That's the lungs.
Yeah. Wait. Tell us a little bit about the yin yang pair.
Sure. Yeah. And I love focusing more on the yin
Oh,
because
okay.
I'm a yin
Yeah.
yoga teacher.
Okay. Yeah.
So lungs are the yin of the metal element, but of course the yang, and there's always a oppositional equitable force between both organ sites. The yang of the metal of this letting go is the large intestine. And in both of these organ sites, you see physiologically the role of release. The lungs take in oxygen and release carbon dioxide. They release toxicity. They have got really porous tissue. The fine capillary walls of the lung membranes are like these fine sieves, these filters that take out, excrete toxic elements from the air we're breathing in, what in Chinese medicine we call heavenly or celestial qi, bringing that in, taking what's required, what's essential, what's nutritive, and then breathing out the rest. The exhale is like the death. It's like the mini shavasana where we completely let go, reset before we welcome in new life on the next inhale. So lungs are really the organ of transition, of evolution, of the death rebirth uh, cycling. And then the large intestine as well, a very important sphere of the digestive system, which really does incorporate what we call grain chi, right? Nutritive chi that we're taking in, the foods we eat, the experiences we're digesting, the narratives we're absorbing, the stories we're churning over, right? All of that gets churned through the spleen, through the large intestine, and then we fortify with what's nutritive. What can we extract from this experience, from this food, from this relationship, from this trauma that's going to strengthen my internal reserves of resiliency? And then what's the shit I can let go of?
Gosh, I
Literally,
can let go
right?
of.
The
Uh,
large intestines, that metal. And one interesting thing with the metal element, and this is for lungs and for large intestine, and is very prominent in the autumn. By the way, these functions of the organs in all the five element wheel become more obvious when there's an imbalance, if
mm,
we're in that season.
mm,
So, likely, if we're moving through loss and we haven't been supporting lung or large intestine channels, we're feeling uh, accumulation of grief that's leading to dysfunction,
mm,
right? And that's really a good question to grapple with. Like, how much grief is appropriate in whatever environment and circumstance I find myself in?
mm.
Is there the aparigraha? Are we moving through? Are we turning towards digesting, breathing it in, right? Not repressive energy, but turning towards and then allowing that to be moved through the system. That's, trauma one-on-one. It is that experience that's overwhelming needs to be sequenced through the organism, through the motor neurons. We need to feel what's occurring. That's why meditation time is so crucial. Turn towards that which is causing grief and then rely on the inherent balance of the system to process it out. Now, the metal element, lung and large intestine, is all about self-worth. Just like metals, like precious metals in the earth,
Mm.
give a lot of value to the soil and thinking, minerals, the precious gems. metal element within us is also our sense of pride
Hmm,
and self-worth.
hmm,
And so there's a dignity
hmm,
to our sorrow. There's a dignity to the sorrow, to the loss that we've moved through. And the metal element asks of us, can we still stand with ourselves? Can we still be here with a sense of willingness,
hmm.
rather than shriveling up, rather than just completely curling in and getting small? Can we still be big and open, proud, even in the season of being asked to let go of a lot?
Mm, mm. Wow, that's beautiful. I haven't heard that like that before. That's amazing. And one thing I really was picking up on there is the digesting of stories,
Mhm.
like that processing through of, how would you say it? Old patterns, ideas,
Yeah, old
insecurities.
patterns, limiting beliefs, right? Parts in the psycho-social, emotional sphere, really that tend to be quite young within us, these voices that sound like I'm inadequate, I'm inappropriate, I'm insufficient, right? These are the voices of the self-critic.
Mm,
And they do inform a lot, particularly because they're young voices. We tend to adopt as young ones. They inform how we move through overwhelming experience and delightful experience.
mm,
They are there through all the seasons of our life. So it's good. It's really good work uh, to turn towards all of the voices that don't believe within us about our power, about our dignity, about our resource, to
mm,
turn towards them and then train them
mhm.
to re-believe.
Precious metals.
Yeah,
Wow.
precious jewels.
Yeah, jewels. I love that. Wow. Beautiful. I love how you're just like weaving in uh all these different modalities together right now. I can feel that in your lineages. It's beautiful. Thanks.
Thank you. And yes, you are probably hearing and some of that nod towards the internal family systems therapy. It's such a strong modality that I work with personally and professionally. And it's a great thing to intermingle with Chinese medicine because it's like bringing the ancient wisdom from the East and some of the newer modalities from the West, seeing where those align, like there must be some truth there in the healing potential. So
Hmm.
that cross section, I really love finding where they agree, East and West.
The weave, huh?
Yeah, the weed.
Yeah, beautiful. What are some things that you might offer them? It's like maybe foods or teas or practices to like really nourish during this season.
Yeah, beautiful question. Because we really can bring in some support
Mhm.
to help us heal the imbalances, particularly if we are hosting what feels like an unbearable amount of grief or trauma. The first thing I want to say is that we need a team of
Mm.
earth angels. We cannot do it alone. We were never meant to do it alone.
Yes.
I think that's a really masculine assumption that a lot of us make in the West. When we're moving through difficulty, we've got to figure it out on our own, and it does take a village. So first and foremost, more than the tea and the foods and the bone broths and the yin yoga poses, more
Mhm.
than anything, it's like, who's in your corner right now?
Yeah.
Who are you being held by? Who's your team? If you don't have a coach or a mentor or a therapist, why not?
Mm.
And get the body work, right? Have the therapy. One of the best things you can do for the lungs is cry. And
Mhm.
I'm talking like the ugly cry, the sobbing, because that actually,
Mm.
oh, that dislodges all of that gunk, all of that decaying material in the lung tissue, when those membranes get pink and pearly again, like think about how tears really lubricate energetically the vital organs, particularly in the upper body, heart and lungs, with the sobbing. When the lung membrane becomes cleared, then it's a lot more efficient in moving through and taking in and exhaling what's no longer needed. So ways that we're holding on to tension, to congestion, lungs, of course, get very congested in this season. And I'll give you an acupuncture point to work that.
Mhm.
But more than anything, the sobbing, the crying is part of the nervous system's way of releasing what's burdening, what's heavying, and relighting the system, lodging, dislodging debris for the lung tissue.
Got it.
So have a therapist, cry with your therapist. And at home, specifically for the lungs, the traditional Chinese medicine suggestion is gentle, warming herbs during this time. I put ginger in everything these days. Ashwagandha is a great super herb.
Beautiful.
Turmeric. You
Mm,
know, think pumpkin season. Like we want all of that pumpkin spice, the warming, the cinnamon, the coriander, the cumin, the turmeric, uh, and then foods with a slight sour flavor, like lemon,
mm,
supports lung vitality. We want that kind of sour taste for the lungs. So I start in the mornings with lemon and apple cider vinegar with hot water,
mm,
maybe a little ginger in there too. That's like the lung elixir.
mm. Beautiful.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any other quick tips to kind of integrate easily. You know, I'm a huge fan of bone broth. Get as much collagen as you can to refortify, really not just the lung tissue, but if you're in an aging body, which we all are, the collagen is one of the best ways to fortify the connective tissue, which is where the meridian channels run through, right? So we want that really resilient, durable fascia. The energetic highways of the meridians run through the fascia. Collagen's one of those supplements that is is a fortification
Nourishing.
for
Yeah.
that whole fascial fabric.
Beautiful. Thanks. How about this acupuncture point?
Yeah. Okay. So I have two special ones for the
Okay.
lungs, just things that we can do acupressure on our own.
Mhm.
The lung meridian, firstly, it runs through the fascia that connects all that connective tissue that runs from the sternum, the sternio-clavicular joint, along the clavicle, around the upper rungs of the rib cage, through shoulder girdle. So notice if you're right when we're rounding in here, we're slumped in, we're cutting off the lung channel through the front of the rotator cuff, and we get the widow's hump in the back body. That's that grief, that
Right.
grief rounding. So we want to open. Remember, metal is proud, shining sun from the breastbone. So we can start to open up lung channel all the way, which does reach through all the way through the thumb.
Yeah.
So from sternum all the way through the thumb, we want to think about that bright opening. Back bends are great. We get that lung curvature in the thoracic spine, buoyant in the breastbone, long in the collarbones. Now, lung one, the first point on the lung line, is near the shoulder. And if you just kind of palpate under the collarbone towards the shoulder head, you might find a place that feels a little tender, a little sticky, or like a hot spot. And that's probably your lung one point. And it helps to clear congestion through the whole line. So it's like you're kind of just mobilizing the electrical current of chi, what one of my students called electricity. You're mobilizing that prana body to just clear out the gunk,
Mhm.
particularly heart and lungs work so in tandem with one another. So lung one, finding that hot spot towards the shoulder head, just under the collarbone. helps to clear congestion from the whole line and start to open up mm, that buoyancy, that levity that we'll need to move through heavied circumstance. So lung one clears congestion. Lung seven is right at the base of the thumb joint where it connects with the wrist.
Is that the master point?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
And you can feel probably too some sharpness, some stickiness, a little twinge there. Often, if we have emotional tension, if we're moving through loss, breakup, heartbreak, loss of a job, loss of a friend or family member, right? Any experience of death, this congestion does tend to accumulate in the lung seven point, and so that helps release any emotional tension stored in the lungs.
Great.
And what we really mean when we say healthy lung line
Hmm.
is this mantra, I'm comfortable with loss in all of its forms. And that doesn't mean, by the way, that we have to like what's happening, right? There's a very clear distinction
Hmm.
between being comfortable or tolerant or willing to move through something versus it being our preference.
Hmm.
Of course, it will never be our preference to move through grief, but the lung meridian mantra is really, well, I have enough stability and self energy to be comfortable with loss in
Hmm.
all of its forms.
Hmm. I don't have to like it, but I
Don't
can
have to
lean
like it.
into it, maybe, huh?
Yeah. And we keep turning towards so we can actually let go, right? The capacity to release and eliminate is the function of the lungs, but we can't do that if we've created repressive energy where we can't even look at what's occurring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks. I'm just
Mhm.
thinking about like a bolster and like some sort of position for them to
Mhm.
kind of open this channel up and get that kind of support. Is there something that you could offer
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, that's a great idea. Really, any kind of back bends is going to support heart and lung function, and particularly the upper thoracic and even cervical spine back bends we want for the lung tissue. And so, yes, a bolster either along the length of the spine or even better, propped underneath the shoulder blades so that the back bend is emphatically coming from the lungs, from the thoracic spine. And then any kind of yoga pose or expression where the arms are doing the opposite of what we're normally doing,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's that crunching in the shoulder, that rounding in. We see that in our planks and in our down dogs and in our child's pose, even. So we want to think about the antidote to everyday life, our normal range of motion in the shoulders. We want to go for the natural range of motion,
Mm-hmm.
which is thinking about how can we get our arms up and above, over to the sides or behind us even better. So the back bends, and I love that suggestion, Shane, like the reaching up and over on a bolster is a beautiful expression of an open lung line. So thinking about any shapes, upward facing dog, seal pose, that we can open the front body, the upper uh, thoracic spine. You really want to think about like a back bend in the lungs.
In the
Does
lungs.
that make sense?
Yeah, beautiful.
Mhm.
I need to get a fluffy bolster, but that sounds lovely. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you don't have a bolster, you could just roll up a yoga mat. And I like that sometimes because there's a sticky, like a grippiness there. You can get your shoulder blades right up and over the rolled up yoga mat and use that as a prop wherever you are.
Mhm. Right. Anything else that's kind of stirring or brewing around this season, this element, this meridian, our beautiful pink lungs? Is there anything else that's
Yeah, beautiful pink pearly lungs. One thing that neuroscientists have found is that when we bring a sense of care and compassion to our own sorrow and to our own loss, the same place in the brain, the same region of the brain gets activated as if somebody else was doing that for us.
Mm,
We don't make the internal distinction
mhm,
between kindness given and kindness that we're giving ourselves. That's a really really good news
mhm,
because we now have the responsibility and the invitation to capacitate ourselves with creating a very caring, holding environment for whatever is occurring, right? So part of that pink, pearly, spongy, healthy, young lung tissue is the emotional mm, sponginess, softness, gentle tenderness, the way in which we are kind to ourselves.
mm. So kind of almost like generating self energy through compassion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Compassion is
Mm,
the quickest route to awakening for ourselves and the compassion we give to others. If we're not able to be compassionate with ourselves, it'll be a ridiculous expectation that we'll somehow be able to conjure that up for somebody else's vulnerabilities instead. So this is the great heart of what we call the bodhisattva, the awakened heart, is how do we meet ourselves in these seasons of loss and hold ourselves warmly? Because that will set up the template in our organism for how we host others in their vulnerabilities.
mm,
And that's really why we practice, isn't it?
mm, mm. Beautiful. Wow. Thank you. Really, really great. Our community
Hmm.
is coming together tonight. Just doing a healing session for everyone who was affected by the hurricane. So I'll try and offer and host this for them prior. And wow, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. My heart
Yeah.
and lungs go out to this community and in regards to climate change trauma, we are all in it together. And even those who feel like it's very far away from them, we will all be moving through it in some degree at some point. So just, yeah, bowing to the strength and the resiliency of the community I've seen through social media and through so many shares, really what's being enacted and that there's a sense of solidarity from us here.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.
Tell us about your upcoming offerings. How can these
Oh,
folks find you?
yay.
Oh,
Okay, great. Well, I will share a link with you that's got a list of all the upcoming. We just launched a few. There's a 3 month container for internal family systems therapy, and Shane moved through this recently with me. And so it's a beautiful journey into self and really working with the parts that host loss and host sorrow. It's a 3 month virtual container of internal family systems. I have several really exciting in-person immersions. One coming up in December. I spoke a little bit about the fascia today. Well, I have a 2 day fascia workshop here in Boulder at one of my favorite sanctuaries, the Star House. It's a 2 day fascia workshop, really training intensive, working the connective tissue in December. That's fascia, the fabric of our form.
mhm.
Uh,
Love
I
it.
have a winter yin immersion in Santa Barbara in January,
Fun.
and that's actually in the Chinese medicine wheel. That's all about the kidneys. So that's a weekend immersion into the kidney channel and the water element. That's winter yin in Santa Barbara. And then there's a few more. I won't ramble on the whole list, but there's quite a few upcoming virtual and in-person immersions, trainings, retreats, professional development courses. There's a lot of beautiful things happening. So I'll share the link and hope that anyone who's interested could be in touch. I'm also available to work one-on-one with anyone that feels like they need some extra care and support in this season.
Great. Beautiful. Thank you so much. And just again, really
Yeah.
appreciating your wisdom and your weave of different traditions. And definitely from myself, like really appreciating a kind of a deeper somatic experience within the IFS system.
Mhm.
So that really resonates for me. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks
Yeah.
for this
Yeah.
time together.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
sweet to see you.
You too. Thanks for taking the time.
Mm.
All right. Take care. All right. Thanks.